Hi, my name is Bada Akintunde-Johnson, and I am an under 40 CEO.
The African Renaissance. The concept that the African people and nation shall overcome the current challenges confronting the continent and achieve cultural, scientific, and economic renewal is here, with young men and women taking the lead. Some call them the new school heroes. We call them under 40 CEOs.
For close to 2 decades now, Bada Akintunde-Johnson has worked in the marketing communications and media spaces. He is very passionate about leadership, family, Africa, music, and football. He hopes to play his part in changing the mindsets that have held our continent back for centuries. He is a graduate of communication and language arts from the University of Ibadan, holds a postgraduate diploma in marketing communications from the Chartered Institute of Marketing in London, and is currently studying for an MBA at the Berlin School of Creative Leadership in Germany. Before his current role, he worked in advertising as Creative Director Globacom, creating some of the most talked about and most awarded campaigns of the decade in Nigeria. He also created successful advertising campaigns for brands such as Guinness, Jonnie Walker, UAC Foods, Stanbic Ibtc Bank, Harp, Smirnoff Ice, Garden Sparks, Malta Guinness, Zenith Bank, FCMB, Adidas, ExxonMobil, Lagos City Marathon, Indomie, and many other top brands, whilst working for Tbwa Concepts, Centerspread FCB and SO&U, some of Nigeria's most awarded and most reputable creative agencies. Bada Akintunde-Johnson is the country manager for ViacomCBS Networks Africa.
All right, welcome to Under 40 CEOs, Bada.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right, amazing. Everyone calls you Bada. But I keep wondering, is that your last name or is Akintunde-Johnson your first name? Which is it?
Bada is my surname.
Okay.
Yes, but I adopted Bada as my first name for 2 reasons. First, I'm a huge football fan, as you probably know already.
Yeah.
And all of my idols, I thought, go by their surnames, or we call them by their surnames. Maradona, Pele, Messi, Ronaldo. Their first names, yes, we know, but at the end of the day, I feel like your pursuit for excellence, for value creation, and solving humanity's problems and all that should ultimately make people remember your family name.
Okay.
And so,
So in a bid to build this iconic status and brand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then again, I thought Akintunde-Johnson is a compound name, has a hyphen in between. It's a long name. If you can't call the whole name, don't break it up. Don't call me Akin or Tunde or Johnson. And then for non-Nigerians or non-Yoruba people, especially when I was 7 in Enugu, Akin proved the problem. They kept calling me Aki, which means coconut or popo or something like that. No, coconut, yeah. So I just figured Bada was easy for everyone, regardless of where you're from. The word bad is probably in your register somewhere. To add, A to
Bada.
Bada. Yeah. It just works.
Amazing. So let's go way back now.
Yeah.
So you attended Keke High School in Oba.
Yeah.
And of course you were born and grew up in Lagos.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your background, family, growing up in Lagos, your preteen years.
My preteen years were quite eventful. My life has always been eventful. And I say eventful because I wanted to be so many things, and I gave them a decent push or try. My parents registered me at the Pepsi Football Academy quite early. Before I got into secondary school, actually, I was one of the first set of people to play in the Pepsi Academy. And that was a big deal, because the Pepsi Academy at the time, the national teams, the senior national teams, Super Eagles, were sponsored by Pepsi. So if you were in the academy in the Lagos Center, you had the opportunity to play like games just before the Nigerian national team at the national stadium. You had, at the time, I think 1998, the national team coach, Bora Milutinovic, coming to the center to come and train,
Wow.
Yeah, it was such a big deal. Lagos. Played actually there. So I remember my preteen and teenage years as super eventful. It was church on the one hand, church music, evangelism, which I had to get involved in as well. It was a lot of football, both in school and at the academy, and of course, I would like to say I was an above average student. So I would have other responsibilities like class captain or prefect, or all of those things added on besides education. It was not just enough to be excellent in school. You had to learn the right values. You had to learn how to treat people, how to speak to people, how to respect people, and all of those things. So I think that in terms of hands-on training and molding, I had an excellent upbringing, I would say, in that regard. And the fire to just, push and be excellent, extraordinary, and all of that was inbuilt from the very beginning.
Amazing. And of course, that foundation propelled you out of Lagos to the University of Ibadan, where you would study communication and language arts. Why did you choose that course of study at the university as well?
To be honest, it was almost a natural choice from the standpoint that the University of Ibadan has always held a special place in the heart of members of my family. My only brother graduated from the school. He studied philosophy. My uncle, my dad's younger brother, was at the time I was writing JAM and preparing to go to university, was the dean of the Faculty of Agriculture in the same school. I had a family there, his family, obviously. So it was a choice between the University of Lagos, because shortly after secondary school, I started a group called Nature with two friends who were rappers. I was singing, and we got a record deal. So in order to keep my entertainment side or career going, I wanted so bad to stay in Lagos. But if I also wanted to focus on my studies, I knew that it had to be away from Lagos, and the closest place to Lagos was Ibadan, where I had a family. When I got into school in my first year, my uncle actually told me that I was the 27th Bada that was attending UI. Oh, wow. And he made a joke of the fact that the University of Ibadan, if you knocked off the I and the N in Ibadan, you would have University of Bada, so it was quite natural. In fact, my first choice was University of Lagos. I wanted to study mass comm. Maybe I'm one of the very few persons I know actually who are in the same line they dreamed they would be from the very beginning. So when I was in secondary school, I was quite active in the press club. I had a huge reputation in school as the football guy, because at the time, of course, DSTV wasn't accessible to all, but I followed football so intently. I bought football magazines, almost everything that was available at the time, with whatever spare cash I had on me. I was started off on that journey by my brother when I was like 7 or 8. The first magazine I received as a gift was on the Seoul 88 Olympic Games. And even though I was barely 7, I just picked up the culture of buying newspapers and magazines about football and sport generally. Started collecting African soccer, complete sports, world soccer, 442, all of those. And I still have them in my library, Wow. So by the time I got in secondary school, I already knew more than most about football. So I became the football guy. So the press club, I would read sports news and whatnot. So I just knew that I would find more joy within that media space, especially if it was either football or music, So at the time when I was preparing to go and serve after my time in UI, the plan actually was to go start my master's, not serve yet. Like immediately after uni, go do your master's in the UK and come back and serve. But then my dad fell ill. The family sort of fell on some hard times. And even though I had my admissions, we couldn't raise the money for the tuition. So my parents had to reach some kind of compromise with me to say, you know what, you can see what's going on with your dad. Why don't you go and serve? Hopefully he gets better. Hopefully the finances also get better. By the time you come back, then you can go for your master's. So instead of hopping on a plane and flying to East London, I was heading to Eastern Nigeria. And I remember that trip on an ABC transport bus very vividly. I was crying almost the entire way. I was so disappointed. I was so gutted that, I wasn't going to do my master's at the time. But then I got to Enugu and I had one of the most amazing years of my life. We grew up with this mentality that if you weren't well connected in Nigeria, you probably would graduate and not get a job, and all those mindsets. And Enugu sort of dispelled, and bursted some of those myths in my mind, because I went to a part of Nigeria I'd never been before, where I knew nobody, and I was pretty much elevated to star status. I was doing some work with the Enugu State Action Committee on AIDS, because some of my school projects centered on creating awareness for AIDS. So I spoke to the special assistant to the governor of the state at the time on HIV/AIDS, on some of the work I'd done in school, got very interested, asked myself and my friend to come and, help them out at the Enugu State Action Committee on AIDS. Had, some kind of show on NTA Enugu, was also teaching in the school. So I saw that if you had value to offer, Nigeria wasn't impossible as they said. In fact, while I was there, I even ran an Amala business.
Oh, wow.
I started a restaurant called Just Amala on camp with a few friends, So I think a lot of the things I'd had as ideas that I thought you needed some kind of validation from abroad to be able to do. I just realized that all you needed to do was the ability to do them, not necessarily validation. Just go ahead and do them. So I came back to Lagos, permit me to say different animal. All of my fears had been taken away, just based off the 1 year that I spent in Enugu, just being the man that I thought that I would need some paper certificate from abroad or whatever to be. So I came back to Lagos and I decided that I was just going to start a business. And what business did I start? Shortly before the World Cup in 2006, I started the Galaxy 2006. Shortly before that World Cup, I went through Daystar Leadership Academy.
Okay.
So a day before we graduated, there was this word that Reverend Samadeyemi said about God laying something on someone's heart here, that God wants you to do something about the situation of the people in your area, that if you don't obey, though you are a graduate, you might be grounded. I wrote it down. I just owned that word. It was for me. And what did I think God wanted me to do? My area didn't have a decent enough viewing center. So whenever there was no light, the viewing center available wasn't the place I could go to. So I thought, instead of just complaining that there was no decent viewing center, why don't you just build
That's a football viewing center.
Football viewing center.
Yeah.
So I thought, why don't you just build one? Maybe that's what God wants you to do. So I went about raising the capital. At the time, it was about 1.8 million to lease a plot of land that I could build a hall that could seat 300 people on. And so I built it and carved out a portion for gaming. So I had PS2, PS3 consoles, I had TV sets. I did that within 2 or 3 months. Most of the funds I raised came from people who had never met me before.
Nice.
Yeah. My friends, uncles, I just would share the dream with my friends. I'd be like, oh, I have an uncle that likes football as an Arsenal fan too. Do you want to come and speak with him? I'll go and they will write me a check of 50,000. That's how I raised the money. So the boldness I brought from Enugu got stepped up even to a much higher level with the first business I set up. So in the month I started building that center, I saw Galaxy advertising vacancy for a presenter. So I saw that sports was listed as one of the areas. So I went in there. I kid you not, there must have been like 1,000 people at that auditions. Most of them were people that I grew up watching on TV. So I thought I stood no chance, actually. But then, as I was turning to leave because of the crowd, a friend from UI saw me. I was like, oh, it's quite fast, Tunde. Why don't you just chill? So I waited, did the first round of auditions. Fantastic. I got shortlisted. Cut long story short, that 1,000 plus people got whittled down to 6. I was the only guy standing.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how I got the Galaxy job.
Wow, amazing. That's a really good story. And so, what would you say were those key highlights from your time
at Galaxy TV?
At Galaxy?
I think the biggest highlight was we were sent for a training, about a month, camera, diction, presentation. And when we came back, we were just assigned arbitrarily. So I was assigned to news. And I knew I didn't want to do news. So I wrote a letter to the president of Galaxy TV, Mr. Steve Ojo, that if I wasn't doing sport, I'd rather just leave, you know. And before then, even though I was in news, I was helping Mr. Dele Adetiba, that's Kemi Adetiba's father, and his partner, Dikin Ayoshitelu, who was one of the top analysts on NTA back then. They had a show called The Grandmasters on Saturdays, where they used to discuss tennis, cricket, and things they found interesting, but the audience didn't really like. So I elected to help them produce the show and make it tighter. So I cut it down from a 3-hour show to a 1-hour show. And they liked it. So when I wrote that letter to the president of the organization, I sent copies to them. Guess what? The two of them came away from their work and went to have a meeting on my behalf with the man to say, this young man is a pretty talented guy. Let him be in sport. The man's mindset was that for you to be authoritative and respected in sport, you had to be a veteran. You had to be someone like much older. I was too young. I was barely 25. So how can this guy say he wants to sit and be talking football? The guy knows his stuff. Let him. So that's how I stayed. You know, he left me. No news, sport. I had an 11-month stint there, but it was a life-defining period. Even before I left, I'd been getting calls from independent producers who were producing big shows on the network, you know, to present or analyze. So when I left, one of them, Mr. Taige, Hotspots, called me and gave me one of my first big jobs on TV, from which I bought my very first brand new car.
Nice.
Yeah, so the trajectory from Galaxy just went, you know, through the roof. I would say, skipped so many steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was still not my main job, because when I left Galaxy, I went to advertising.
TBWA?
Yeah, I took a job as a copywriter in advertising, because on the one hand, I loved presenting sport and all that, but it also didn't engage me mentally enough. I felt like I should be doing more. I should be learning in the line of my work. I didn't see that much learning, because remember, I've been following football actively since I was 7. So a lot of it were things I was already doing anyways. Just sitting and talking about matches I would have watched anyway didn't task me enough. So, and because I studied communication, advertising was one of the key areas. There was PR, there was broadcast, you know, there was print journalism. So to go to advertising was a natural choice. So I went to Orange Academy, trained for about a month. We had an exhibition, some MDs and creative directors from agencies came there. I got 3 job offers that night, actually.
Wow.
And then I went with the TBWA one, started out as a copywriter whilst keeping my other life as a football on-air personality on the side.
So you had your side gigs going.
Yeah.
You went to Orange Academy as a student for a month, you said. And then you returned as a lecturer.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So I guess the guys had seen enough to think of me as someone who was capable of being like a graduate assistant, as you would call it in the university setup, where I wasn't at first lecturing. I was just assisting other people, other students who came after me to sort of understand some of the things that the lecturers probably wouldn't be able to do on an interpersonal level. So I was speaking to them one-on-one, helping them with their projects and all that initially. Then as time went by, I started to, you know, take some classes. Okay. But it was in an unpaid capacity. I was just helping out Kenny Badmos because he became like a friend and a mentor to me. Kenny was young. He was the creative director of Centerspread, one of the biggest advertising agencies at the time. And then he started his school, Orange Academy. So I was assisting him there. Ended up working with him at Centerspread some years later. So that was how the whole lecturing thing with Orange Academy started. You know, immediately after I finished, I started assisting them, you know, with some of the projects, and then from there, you know, I started.
As a presenter and producer with Galaxy Television Lagos, Bada continued to be a popular and respected sports media personality, working extensively as a soccer pundit and regularly featured on the live broadcasts of football competitions such as the UEFA Champions League, the English Premier League, La Liga, the Bundesliga, the FIFA World Cup, and some of the most watched sports shows across major television and radio stations in Nigeria. From being a student at Orange Academy to being a lecturer, Bada's career gets even more exciting as he became the creative manager at Hi TV, Nigeria's biggest indigenous pay TV platform at the time. Here, he led the in-house post-production and creative agency teams.
All right, so from TBWA to Centerspread, and then by October of 2008, you had found your way back to television at Hi TV. So tell me, what was your job description at the time?
Job title was Creative Manager, Hi TV Limited. Job description was to manage all of the on-air branding. You know, Hi TV was a pay TV platform that had foreign channels, but also had their own proprietary channels. So channels like Hi Nolly, Hi Kids, Hi Mix, all of the channels that we were curating or creating content for. So the whole responsibility of creating the channel identity, the branding, the colors, the fonts, the idents, the stings, montages, promos. I had a team of motion graphics guys, non-linear editors, animators, guys who pretty much, create editors who create graphics and piece them together. Guys who also could do short form and long form content, because we also did some adverts for the platform that ran on the platform. We shot them ourselves. I also did some work as well within the agency unit, because Hi TV never appointed or retained a creative agency to do the advertising. The advertising was done internally. And me coming from an advertising background meant that I was writing copy for the art directors to knock the posters together for Hi TV. So it was on-air packaging as well as communications.
So by October of 2011, you had moved back to advertising again. SO&U, this time as Deputy Creative Director. And I sense that you must have really enjoyed your time there, because you spent 6 years there. I think that's the longest you've spent at any organization. Tell me about your time at SO&U.
So it felt like I had two different phases at SO&U, and I'll explain why. The first phase was from when I got appointed to 2013. That was 2011, 2013. I worked as the lead writer on the Guinness business, as Guinness Foreign Extra Stout. So that was my baby. Even though I worked on other accounts as well, but that was my core focus, to be responsible for the creative advertising for Guinness. So I handled Guinness and some of the spirits. I remember shooting a commercial with Samson Siasia for Jonnie Walker in Ghana at about 2010. So that ended in 2013 when I was about to leave the company to join Steve Babeko at 141, actually. Oh. I had been made an offer. I had resigned at SO&U. And my reason was I wanted to work on a telco business. I wanted to work on a telecommunications brand, because telcos typically spend more money on marketing than most companies. And within that telco business portfolio, you would also have the opportunity to work on financial services, because they had e-wallet and all those kind of things that they were pushing. You would work on value-added services. They would have, music. They would have all kinds, sports. So the diversity of a telco portfolio meant that you had a lot more latitude to express your creativity than just sitting down working on an alcoholic beverage, brand. So that was my motivation. So I had already received the offer letter from 141 to work on the Etisalat account as a creative. And then I had to give a notice of 5 weeks at SO&U. They had tried to talk me out of it. The creative director, Tiger, particularly, had appealed to me to reconsider that, they would match the offer that 141 was making me to stay back. But I'm like, you can match the offer, but you can't match the opportunity. Because I wanted to work on a telco brand. Guess what? I guess in the final week of me deciding to stay, Glow walked in on the platter. Typically, those are the highest paying, brands in market. So people would have to go through a series of pitches and whatnot to win those kind of accounts. But Glow walked in. And even then, there was a lot of mental hurdles to cross. Hurdles in the sense that people had all kinds of negative mindsets about Glow. Felt like, they were too quick to sack agencies. between 3 to 6 months, they typically would change agencies. So me staying back to work on such an account didn't make sense. A lot of my friends tried to talk me out of it. Like, see, it is a lot that has been with 141 for so long. Go there, they are more stable. This Glow thing, they probably will sack SO&U within 3 to 6 months anyway. So, don't stay back because of that. But see, all my life, I've found that when people say things are difficult or things are almost impossible, they just get me attracted to doing them, to be honest. So I stayed back, took on the responsibility of actually being the guy responsible for the account as creative director. Even though the client asked for an expatriate from the very beginning, I ended up doing the next 4 years as the Nigerian expatriate creative director on an account that people had predicted wouldn't last more than 6 months. Hi, my name is Bada Akintunde-Johnson, and you too can be an under 40 CEO.